for the September 11th attack. Why did they think that?
Forget about forgetting. They don't know. They don't know. I picked up my local paper today. Yesterday there was a vote in the House of Representatives which would have provided, which passed, which would, if it carries into law, provide hundreds of billions of dollars in tax breaks to a handful of families in this country. It wasn't mentioned in the newspaper. The repeal of the estate tax, half of the benefits of that repeal will go to the richest 1/10 of 1% of the population. All of the benefits will go to the wealthiest 2% of the families in America. You got that? 98% of the families do not pay one nickel in estate tax. I walked down the street a couple of months ago. Guy goes up and he says, "Bernie, I'm really angry at you." You know, why are you angry? "I've got $20,000 in the bank and I want to leave my money to my kids, and why are you stopping me from doing that?" $20,000. This guy's not going to pay one penny in estate tax. People don't know that. So what they do is they poll. They got very good pollsters, and you play off the general ignorance of the population. People don't know much. Death tax sounds pretty good. Everybody who dies, you got to pay a huge tax to the federal government. Not true.
We put the death tax on the road to extinction. The death tax is a bad tax.
And yet that 99% ran around waving little flags going, "We're free! We're free! We live in a democracy! Woohoo!"
If the media had been on the job during the 2000 election, for example, if they had reported what was actually going on and reported it with all due emphasis and repetitiousness, kept on the story day after day. I don't mean the occasional piece on page 10 of the New York Times. I mean appropriate coverage where you follow the scandal. If that had happened, Bush Cheney wouldn't be in the White House today because they weren't elected.
The problem was, for those of us who just think whoever gets the most votes should win and wanted a fair election, the journalism didn't reflect that interest. It was a prisoner of that range of debate, and therefore it played directly into the hands of the Republicans.
The BBC reported that 5 months before the 2000 election, Governor Jeb Bush moved to purge 57,000 people from the voting rolls, supposedly ex-felons.
The great story that was broken by Greg Palast from Britain, which has now been confirmed, on for the first time, the use of by Catherine Harris of this private company to come up with a list of felons who wouldn't be permitted to vote, which was a dreadfully bogus list of thousands of people who weren't permitted to vote, who should have been.
According to Palast, a private firm with Republican ties, Database Technology, signed a $4 million contract to provide scrub lists of ex-felons. Part of the job was to verify the list, which the firm acknowledged was inaccurate.
The state of Florida brought in.
These guys have hundreds of lobbyists. They have nearly 300 lobbyists, paid lobbyists, and they're giving away tens of millions of dollars in campaign contributions, and they control whether or not a politician ever gets on the air all over America. That's power.
Being successful lobbying at the FCC or Congress is as important to the bottom line as producing a movie that's a big hit. I mean, it's every bit as important. It's more important. That's basically stealing stuff from government is the key. And this is where the media companies are extremely successful because they, unlike any other corporate lobby, have one thing going for them the others don't. They actually control the means by which the public can actually learn about these debates. You can imagine Exxon would love to own the media, or Philip Morris. So any debate over cigarettes has to go through them.
They took members of Congress on 315 all-expense-paid trips around the world. And then you have the FCC regulating the broadcaster, 1,400 privately funded trips. The problem in this town is that a lot of the regulators that have been set up to protect the public interest have been captured by the people they're regulating, and that's been going on for years. It's not new, but it's outrageous.
Regulators, the Federal Communications Commission, almost always upon leaving office, go to work for the people they were supposedly regulating in the public interest.
Beneath the reported story of greedy Enron executives is a story about the influence of money over government regulators. This is what has happened with the media companies.
Had been well designed. Crazy, crazy Jane is dancing. Crazy Jane's the dance.
Get these monopoly rights to TV stations. They don't pay a penny to the people for getting these monopoly rights to TV frequencies. Then they turn around and sell time on the public property and make billions of dollars and destroy our political system. All the while they pay off the politicians themselves to keep getting these monopoly rights. The corruption here is dreadful.
The public is really at a loss. What do you do about that exactly? I'm not quite sure. I mean, they're probably, in a perfect world, there should be a citizens movement about this. People should be marching in the streets. I mean, in some ways, we should be as angry about what's happened to our media as the Russians ought to be about what happened to their media. Now, that would be seen as heresy inside the networks. How dare you? We covered stories all the time last week. Look at this story, look at that story. They would take issue with what I just said.
They'd probably call you un-American.
They would call me un-American and a bomb thrower, and I probably won't be on any of their airwaves anymore after this interview.
It's a democratic issue. It means that one viewpoint will come to dominate in most of the outlets that we use for knowing what's going on in the world.
Many people are not aware that when you watch television, you are watching a program produced by a large multinational corporation that has enormous conflicts of interest.
General Electric and NBC is a perfect example. How can we be sure we're going to get the kind of information we need to have about the nuclear industry, about defense contracts, and all of those things when NBC is beholden to this parent company? Why would they report on that? Of course they wouldn't. Why would ABC report on what's going on at Disney? They wouldn't. There's no point in it. And it's precisely for that reason that those companies want to own television stations in the first place, so that they can keep a check on those sorts of things.
General Electric not aware that when you watch television, you are watching a program produced by a large multinational corporation has made it a very proud part of their policies that they are going to move jobs from the United States of America to China, to Mexico, any place in the world where they can get cheap labor. This suggests obviously that General Electric is deeply concerned about our trade policies. Over the years, General Electric has done its best not to pay taxes, or to pay as little as they can in taxes, taking advantage of all kinds of corporate welfare tax loopholes. Suggests very strongly that General Electric has an interest in tax policy. General Electric is a major polluter. Therefore, they're concerned about weakening environmental policies. It's not obviously just General Electric. It's the same thing with CBS or ABC. The conflicts of interest are enormous, and the result is that certain issues are talked about, certain issues are not talked about.
In 11...
Definition of what is news? Or do you have another definition?
That is a good question, because, yeah, I mean, if it happens but you don't hear about it, did it happen?
Conservative judges have ruled that constraining the reach of media corporations violates their free speech rights.
If you read the First Amendment, there's no question but that free speech rights are rights that belong to citizens. They're individual rights. They're our rights. In the 70s, we started to get this new idea of commercial free speech. This is a very, very peculiar notion, commercial free speech. Because what it does is it casts corporations, corporate entities, as persons, which they're not. I mean, they're not people. You can't find their graves anywhere, unfortunately.
The first speech, when you're talking about the media, it's just a fundamentally disproportionate right. My speech is equal to and as free as the speech of AOL Time Warner when they have this platform of access to the world that, I mean, I'm one person.
Somehow, the freedom to inform the general public has become the exclusive right of media corporations.
Giving them free speech rights was a perverse move. And in fact, it was the kind of thing that conservatives, rock-ribbed conservatives, had ruled out, as recently as the 40s.
During the Clinton administration in 1996, Behind closed doors, the rules of the airwaves were rewritten. In radio, all regulation was literally thrown out. Small independent stations were bought up. Localism disappeared. Companies like Clear Channel went from owning a few stations to owning over 1,100 and dominating whole markets. But something else happened. Under Reagan, in 1987, the Fairness Doctrine was eliminated. Radio and TV stations were no longer required to air opposing viewpoints. This is partially responsible for the rise of right-wing radio, all the time, from coast to coast. The vice chairman of Clear Channel is Tom Hicks. In 1998, Mr. Hicks purchased the Texas Rangers baseball team in a deal that made President Bush a multimillionaire. Clear Channel banned Dixie Chick songs because the lead singer criticized the president on the run-up to the war. Why didn't we find out more about that bill before it was passed?
Well, because who's going to report on it? The media?
According to Bill Moyers, during the Senate debate, Senator John McCain said, "You will not see this story on any television or hear it on any radio broadcast." Altogether, the three major network news shows aired a sum total of only 19 minutes of coverage on the Telecommunications Act over the course of 9 months.
When a consumer group...
A new communications technology has emerged. A few companies soon gain total control over it. Will this happen with the internet?
Well, up until now, the internet has been governed by a system requiring open access. The telephone network on which the dial-up internet is based has been a common carrier, has been open, so anybody could have a website, anybody could transmit anything, and you could have all kinds of companies competing to provide you with internet service. Open access is being replaced now by a system of closed access. So companies like AOL, Time Warner, and Comcast, and Paul Allen's Charter, they're opposed to any kind of open access rules. They say, we want to control internet delivery.